Ever wondered how people in medieval times dealt with fertility issues? Could you imagine trying to conceive without modern medicine? Number 6. Prayer and pilgrimage. Did you know that medieval couples often turned to divine intervention when they couldn't conceive? Religion dominated medieval life, and infertility was frequently viewed as either a punishment from God or something that could be cured through spiritual devotion. Desperate to have children, couples would embark on pilgrimages to holy sites associated with fertility. These journeys weren't your average weekend getaway. Traveling to shrines dedicated to saints who specialized in fertility matters could take weeks or even months on dangerous roads. Imagine walking hundreds of miles just for the chance to conceive. Saint Anne, the mother of the Virgin Mary, was particularly popular among those hoping for a child. Women would visit churches containing her relics, leaving offerings, and spending days in prayer. The shrine of Our Lady of Walsingham in England became a major destination for infertile couples. They believed that drinking from the holy wells there might bless them with a child. Kings and queens weren't exempt from these struggles either. When Catherine of Aragon failed to provide Henry VIII with a male heir, she made pilgrimages and performed countless religious rituals. Unfortunately for her, these methods weren't successful, which ultimately led to dramatic changes in English history when Henry decided to divorce her and break from the Catholic Church. Prayer rituals specifically designed for fertility were common practice. Special masses would be held, and couples would make vows or promises to saints in exchange for their intervention. Some would pledge to name their child after a particular saint or to donate significant sums to the church if blessed with a baby. Churches across Europe displayed ex votos, symbolic offerings left by those whose prayers had supposedly been answered. These often took the form of wax or metal figures shaped like babies or reproductive organs, serving as public testimonials to the power of faith in resolving fertility struggles. Number 5. Magical amulets and charms. Would you wear a rabbit's foot to help you conceive? In medieval times, people absolutely would, and much stranger things too. The boundary between medicine, magic, and religion was remarkably blurry in the Middle Ages. Infertile couples often turned to magical solutions when prayers alone didn't seem to be working. Amulets and talismans were believed to harness supernatural powers that could enhance fertility. One popular charm involved carrying the reproductive organs of hares, as these animals were symbols of fertility due to their rapid breeding habits. Women would wear these rather unsavory amulets close to their bodies, often in specially designed pouches hung around their necks or waists. Gemstones played a significant role in fertility magic too. Emeralds were thought to help women conceive, while jade was believed to increase male potency. Wealthy couples might invest in jewelry containing these stones, wearing them consistently in hopes of improving their chances of conception. Written charms were equally common. Parchment inscribed with prayers, Bible verses, or magical formulas would be folded and carried on the person. Sometimes these writings contained bizarre combinations of Christian prayers and pagan incantations, reflecting the syncretic nature of medieval folk beliefs. Certain plants were fashioned into charms as well. Mandrake roots, with their human-like appearance, were particularly valued. The risk involved in obtaining these plants, it was believed that the mandrake would emit a fatal shriek when pulled from the ground, only added to their perceived power. A mandrake root, placed under a couple's bed, was thought to enhance fertility. Cunning folk, local magical practitioners, made a living creating specialized charms for infertile couples. These might include complex assemblages of herbs, animal parts, metals, and written spells, all due to the specific situation of the couple seeking help. The effectiveness of these charms was rarely questioned. If one didn't work, it merely meant you needed a different type or a more powerful practitioner. Number 4. Herbal remedies and potions. Ever drunk nettle tea to boost your fertility? Medieval women did, along with dozens of other plant-based concoctions that would make modern doctors raise their eyebrows. Herbalism formed the backbone of medieval medicine, and fertility issues were no exception. The knowledge of which plants might influence reproductive health was passed down through generations, often by midwives and wise women who specialized in women's health concerns. Certain herbs were believed to promote fertility in women. Red clover, wild yam, and chaste tree berries were commonly prescribed. These plants were prepared in various ways, steeped as teas, ground into powders, or incorporated into foods. Some, like vitex, chaste tree, actually do contain compounds that can influence hormone levels, though not necessarily in the consistent, controlled way modern fertility treatments do. For men experiencing what we'd now call erectile dysfunction or low sperm count, different herbal remedies were recommended. Ginseng, considered a potent aphrodisiac, was highly valued for male fertility issues. Onions, garlic, and leeks were also believed to increase male potency, with their phallic associations likely contributing to this belief. Recipe books from the period reveal complex fertility potions that combined numerous ingredients. One medieval fertility treatment called for boiling wine with herbs such as mint, pennyroyal, and betony, then drinking the resulting mixture at specific times of the month. Another recommended a concoction of ground-up pig testicles mixed with wine, a primitive attempt at hormone therapy, using organs that produced the needed substances. The timing of herbal treatments was considered crucial. Many recipes specified that they should be taken during certain moon phases or on particular saints' days, believed to be auspicious for conception. Some treatments were meant to be used immediately before attempting conception, while others were long-term tonics meant to gradually enhance fertility. Interestingly, some medieval herbal remedies anticipated modern nutritional advice for those trying to conceive. Diets rich in certain seeds, nuts, and leafy greens were recommended. Foods we now know contain nutrients beneficial for reproductive health. While the explanation for why these foods helped would have differed dramatically from our current understanding, the observational wisdom behind some recommendations was sound. Number 3. Diet and tiety recommendations. Did you know medieval doctors prescribed specific foods to help couples conceive? Would you try eating sparrow brains if someone told you it would help you have a baby? Medieval medical practitioners firmly believed that diet played a crucial role in fertility. The medical theories of the time centered around the concept of the 4 humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile, which needed to be in balance for good health, including reproductive health. Foods were classified according to their supposed effects on these humors. For women trying to conceive, hot foods were often recommended, as the female reproductive system was considered cold and moist. This included spices like cinnamon, ginger, and nutmeg, which were precious commodities in medieval Europe. Wealthy couples might spend small fortunes on exotic spices believed to enhance fertility. Animal products, thought to increase fertility, were often selected based on the perceived reproductive prowess of the animal in question. Thus, sparrow brains and rooster testicles might be prescribed for men, while rabbit meat was recommended for women. The logic was simple. Consume the reproductive power of these fertile animals to enhance your own. Medieval physicians also believed that excessive physical activity could harm a woman's fertility. Women trying to conceive were often advised to avoid strenuous labor and to rest frequently. Considering the physically demanding nature of medieval life for most women, this was advice that few could actually follow. Weight was another consideration, though medieval ideals differed from ours. A somewhat plump woman was considered more fertile than a thin one, and women might be advised to gain weight if they were struggling to conceive. This actually aligns with modern understanding that both underweight and overweight conditions can affect fertility, though the medieval approach lacked nuance. Sexual practices were also regulated by medical advice. Couples were given specific instructions about the timing and positions that would supposedly maximize their chances of conception. Most medieval medical texts agreed that conception was more likely to occur immediately after menstruation, which we now know is incorrect for most women, and that certain positions were more conducive to conception than others. Temperature regulation was yet another concern. Men were warned against excessive heat around the testicles, with hot baths discouraged for those trying to father children. This advice actually has some scientific basis, as sperm production is indeed temperature sensitive, one of the cases where medieval medicine accidentally got something right. Number 2. Surgical and physical interventions. Would you let a medieval barber surgeon perform a procedure on your reproductive organs? Brave souls in the Middle Ages did just that in their quest for children. When herbs, charms, and prayers failed, some medieval couples turned to more invasive methods. Surgical interventions for infertility were rare and extremely risky, but desperate individuals sometimes pursued them nonetheless. For women, physical examinations might be conducted to determine if there were obvious impediments to conception. Midwives or female healers would typically perform these examinations, as male physicians were often prohibited from directly examining female patients due to modesty concerns. These practitioners might attempt to physically manipulate the uterus if they believed it was tilted or otherwise malpositioned. Men experiencing impotence might undergo bloodletting procedures based on the humoral theory that an excess of certain bodily fluids could inhibit sexual function. This dangerous practice involved cutting a vein to drain blood, sometimes specifically from veins in the legs believed to connect to the reproductive organ. More extreme surgical interventions included attempts to repair perceived abnormalities of the reproductive organs. Given the limited understanding of anatomy and the absence of anesthesia or antiseptics, these procedures were extraordinarily painful and dangerous. Infection was a constant risk, and many patients died from what would now be considered relatively minor surgeries. Massage techniques targeting the abdomen were somewhat safer interventions. Specialized massages designed to correct the position of the uterus or to stimulate the reproductive organs were performed by experienced midwives. While less dangerous than surgery, these manipulations could still cause damage if performed too aggressively. For men, various devices were created to address erectile dysfunction. Splints and supports made of leather and wood were crafted to physically assist with intercourse. These primitive devices were uncomfortable at best and potentially injurious at worst. Cupping, the practice of creating suction on the skin using heated cups, was sometimes applied to the lower abdomen for women or the genital area for men. This was thought to draw blood and vital energy to the reproductive organs. While less invasive than cutting, cupping could still cause bruising and burns. Number 1. Social solutions and adoption alternatives. Ever wondered how medieval couples coped when all fertility treatments failed? Did you know that adoption existed in the Middle Ages, but looked very different from today's practices? When medical and spiritual interventions failed, medieval couples had to consider social solutions to childlessness. Unlike today, formal adoption, as we understand it, was relatively rare in medieval Europe, but there were other ways of bringing children into a family. Informal adoption was common, particularly within extended families. If a couple had no children but their siblings had many, they might raise a niece or nephew as their own. This arrangement benefited everyone. The biological parents had one fewer mouth to feed, the childless couple gained an heir, and the child potentially received greater opportunities or inheritance than would otherwise have been possible. Orphanages, often run by religious orders, provided another source of children for childless couples. These institutions were filled with abandoned children, orphans of plague or war, and children whose parents simply couldn't afford to feed them. Taking in such a child was considered a charitable act, though the legal status of these arrangements was often ambiguous. For nobility and royalty, infertility posed particular problems related to inheritance and succession. In these cases, legitimizing illegitimate children was sometimes an option. Noblemen might acknowledge a child born outside of marriage and petition for them to be recognized as his heir. While not ideal by medieval standards, this solution preserved the family line. Fostering was another common practice, particularly among the aristocracy. Children would be sent to live with other noble families, to be raised and educated. While not intended as a solution to childlessness, the practice meant that many households included children who were not the biological offspring of the lord and lady, normalizing non-biological family structures. For wealthy merchants and aristocrats, another option was to purchase a child. This wasn't slavery per se, but rather an arrangement where a poor family would essentially sell their parental rights to a wealthier family. The child would become a legal heir to the adopting family, often taking their name and position. In cases where all else failed, some couples focused their nurturing instincts elsewhere. Women might become particularly involved in caring for extended family, acting as caretakers for aging parents or special aunts to numerous nieces and nephews. Men might take on apprentices in their trade, passing on knowledge and skills as they would to a son. Communities generally rallied around childless couples, finding ways for them to fulfill parenting roles even without biological children. Parenthood was taken very seriously, with godparents expected to take an active role in a child's upbringing. This gave childless couples a socially recognized connection to the next generation. What would you have done if faced with infertility in an era before modern medicine? How far would you go to have a child if you lived in medieval times?